Today on Locked On Red Wings, Gostisbehere has been quiet at 5-on-5. Should we be concerned?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Sky's us over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And on today's episode, we're going to kind of talk about the defense as a whole with a little bit of extra focus on guys like Gostisbehere, Justin Holl. We've talked a lot this season, obviously, about Moritz Seider and Jake Wallman, and they're inherently part of the conversation too, but we're going to focus on a couple of guys that we haven't really talked a whole lot about in depth. Like I said, focusing mostly on Gostisbehere and Holl, but it'll be kind of all encompassing. Scotty, happy Thursday. That is when this will air. Happy Thursday, buddy.
Thanks, man. Happy Thursday to you too.
Thursday. How was your Wednesday? Since I don't know how your Thursday has been.
It's good. Wednesday, my work week is like really busy Monday, Tuesday, and then eases up a little bit on Wednesday, Thursday before the weekend again. So yeah, not bad.
Good. Glad to hear it.
What about you?
It's been good. I was at work today and I was just curious, thinking about and talking to some people about Gostisbehere's play of late, because you and I have done a lot of talking about how poor he is defensively. Something we knew when you signed him, that he was not going to excel defensively, but I didn't think it'd be quite as bad as it is when he is out there. And because of that, he has kind of been relegated to a third pairing role, playing with Ibata, and that's fine. But you were hoping that the offense that he provides would make up for that, right? And if you look at the season totals, it has. He's 6th on the team in points. I believe he has 39 points on the year to this point. Let me double check on that just to make sure I have the statistic right. 33 points on the year, 54 games played, over a half point per game. You look at that, you go, wow, he's been providing offense. But then you look a little bit closer and you realize most of those points are coming on the power play, which again makes sense because he is a special teams power play kind of guy. But you go, okay, but what is he doing for the Red Wings at 5-on-5? Something that is really important to a team's success. And you find out, Scotty, he hasn't had a 5-on-5, not goal, but point since December 23rd. And I just want to ask the question, with a guy like Gostisbehere, who at least on the power play is getting points at a semi-consistent basis, pretty much almost an assist every other game that there's a power play, are we concerned at all with the just sheer absence of defensive zone IQ plus the lack of 5v5 points, when at least on the power play, he is giving you what you had hoped?
I think, I guess it depends on what your definition of concerned is. Like, I think that this is his role on the team. Like, I know we were talking about it a little bit off air beforehand. I mean, he plays the fewest amount of 5-on-5 minutes amongst the entire blue line. He plays fewer 5-on-5 minutes on average than Ibata. So, like, clearly he is deployed and utilized as such. And he is a power play weapon. And, like, I don't think you get to give credit to the power play and the special teams for being really good this year, and then like not mention how good Gostisbehere has been in that production, right? Like the power play has taken a huge step forward this year, and Ghost is 6th on the team in points, like you said, and a majority of those are on the power play. So like I think
I believe
I don't
21 of those points is on the power play, if I am correct.
Yeah. So like for me, it's like the coaching staff knows what he's best at. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like the coaching staff doesn't play him in 5-on-5. Literally the least amount on the team of the 6 defensemen that play regularly. And he is utilized often. and deployed often in the offensive zone and on the power play, obviously, because he produces a lot there. So I don't really know if concern is where my mindset is. I think it's just more of the coaching staff knows what they have in him and are deploying him in a way to get the best value out of him, which is probably to not deploy him in the defensive zone or at 5-on-5 very often. So I don't know. Like there's holes in his game for sure. I mean, clearly that's the whole point of this conversation is there's holes in his game, but I don't know if I would call it concern. I think they're utilizing him pretty much to cater to what we're talking about here.
So I think both can be true at the same time. Like one, yeah, he's been pretty good on the power play. I think Moritz Seider has really cemented himself as the better power play quarterback. And I think you're beginning to see that as well as he has been getting first unit power play time on the blue line. But Gostisbehere, yeah, he's definitely been a big part this year of the resurgence of the power play. But I also don't think it's unfair to ask for him to be a little bit more reliable at 5-on-5. And like you said, right, like he's getting the fewest amount of 5-on-5 ice time, just ahead of Justin Holl, who's scratched every single game. He's getting slightly over 14 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time a game. And I think that's more to say about what he has done, at 5-on-5 than it is just about because I don't think it's unfair to ask him to be a little bit more consistent. You know what I mean? This is a guy who playing on the third pair is playing against the softest competition every single game. You pull up the Dobber Hockey Frozen Tools, and he's right at the bottom of the list. He's getting almost the best deployments. And yeah, he's Corsi relative. He's a positive Corsi 4 in that time. But at the same time, defensive zone, they look lost if they get caught out there against tough competition. I don't think this is a guy that you signed to. And maybe this is my expectations for Shayne Gostisbehere was wrong. Because I remember we were having conversations at the start of the season of him being like a second pair D guy. And he's been buried on the third pair, only being used on the power play. And if you're fine with that, like you said, coaching staff clearly understands what they have in him. And that is somebody who you can't rely on 5-on-5, but you can put out there on the power play. Then yeah, that's fine. But I don't think it's unfair to ask for Shayne Gostisbehere to, I don't know, at least produce some at 5-on-5 if you're going to be just a black hole defensively, because he hasn't had a point since December 23rd, despite getting the best offensive zone deployments out of any defenseman on this team. And yes, I understand that if you're playing third pair minutes, you're likely going to also be paired up with the third and fourth line mates. If you look at who he shared the most ice time with, besides Mata and of course your goaltenders, it's a lot of Sprong and Fabry who are your third and fourth depth wingers. But at the same time, those are guys who can score. So I don't think it's unfair for me to want more out of him offensively at 5-on-5, and for me to be a little bit concerned about the fact that he's just flatlined in that regard, in the same way we're concerned about Alex DeBrincat having flatlined at 5-on-5, when they're both given pretty, obviously DeBrincat faces tougher competition when he's out there because he's on the first or second line, but they get good deployments in terms of where they start their shifts, and Gostisbehere's getting a lot of, he's just shy of 50% of offensive zone deployments, where guys like Seider are at 36% at offensive zone deployments, and Moritz Seider is catching up to him and about to pass him in points. Jake Wallman on that same pair is, surpassed him in goals, has over 10 goals. And I know they have more ice time, but they play much tougher competition. So yeah, they know his role. He's great at power play. He's been getting points almost every other game, it seems, on the power play when they have a power play at least. But I also don't think it's unfair of me to ask for him to at least produce a little bit at 5-on-5 as well. I know I'm splitting hairs. The team's succeeding right now, but if the team wants to have continued success, you're going to need Shayne Gostisbehere to pick it up when the bodies are even on the ice.
Yeah, I sure. I think it's also, I don't know, like comparing him and DeBrincat. I mean, yes, you're right. They both struggle at the same thing, but DeBrincat, if DeBrincat ends up playing in the bottom six on offense, then this is a catastrophic failure, and it's going to set the franchise back because of how much money they invested in him. If Ghost is on your third pair for the second half of the season, you can still make the playoffs. You can still win games because they literally have been. They had the greatest January we've ever seen, and that was with Ghost not scoring a single 5-on-5 point the entire month. That's overcomeable. And I guess to be fair, I guess DeBrincat, like they won in January with DeBrincat, not really producing at 5-on-5 either. But like those are two very different like expected roles. And I guess you kind of prefaced it by saying that, but like those are two very different expected roles on the team going into the year. Ghost is on a 1-year contract for a little over 4 M's. Like DeBrincat is a long term, like you gave him a first rounder to get him, invested long term amount of years and money to get him, like was expected to be your top end goal scorer. Like I think that those are yes, they are struggling at the same thing, but I don't think I think Ghost finding a quote unquote niche role in kind of excelling at the power play is a lot easier to swallow and still like uh, uh, move forward and be, like win games on, versus like if DeBrincat just never scores at 5-on-5 again, like this is going to become a much darker conversation really quickly.
Yeah. So let us know. Let us know in the comments, guys. What do you think? Do you think I'm insane for expecting him to have, be a little bit more effective at 5-on-5, or do you think that he's performing adequately based on the role that they've given him? Let us know in the comments. In segment 2, we're gonna move a little bit to Justin Holl and kind of then branch out to like just the defensive needs as a whole. Hey, that was unintentional. As we head towards the trade deadline, and then segment 3, previewing the game against Colorado Avalanche. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Ibotta. Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibata app and get cash back every time you shop. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could even cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. On this, we're talking about the defense, and I asked the question: should we be expecting more of Shayne Gostisbehere at 5-on-5, given the lack of production we've seen and the defensive struggles that he's had? But not to also overlook what Justin Holl has, I guess, not done in his tenure with the Detroit Red Wings this season. He's been healthy scratched in over 15 games so far after inking a 3-by-3 deal this past offseason. I believe he has a 10-team no trade clause as well. And I wanted to come on here and ask the question, what do you do with Justin Holl? But I think the answer is you really can't do anything but short of trading him to a team that's not on his no trade list, which his value is at an all-time low. So you'll have to either retain or just accept nothing back in, or you waive him, send him to Grand Rapids where you eat the money, or you just buy him out. So short of those options that are mostly off-season things to do, I guess the better question is can Justin Holl, and how would Justin Holl reestablish himself to try and recoup the value that he was perceived to have had in the offseason?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I guess for starters, the only reason you would trade him, like, he has no value. You would not get anything. So the only way you would trade, I would even argue the only way you could trade him is if you gave up assets and you were like, hey, and the Wings aren't in a position to do that. They're not like back up against the cap where they're in, like cap heck, like a lot of teams, where they need to get rid of money in order to, like make other moves or pull something off. Like they still are financially like fine at the present moment. So if that changes over the course of his contract, then you could see something like that happen. But I don't think that's an immediate future thing. And that's the only way I could see him getting off the roster. unless again you just eat the money like you said. I the only way to reestablish like how layman do you want to be? Like play better? Like I don't know. Like
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I don't really know what else to say. I mean, he when he's been on the ice, I mean, he's I think pretty clearly looked like the seventh D man on this team, right? Like this isn't I don't know, rocket science. Like it's just you look at the 7D man that the Wings have on their blue line, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like I don't really think there's too much of an argument for him to be getting legitimate playing time over any of the 6 guys that currently are. At one point, there was a conversation, him and Oli Mata, and then there was him and Petrie and whatnot right at the early part of the season. But this is, I think, pretty just what it is. And he'll plug and play if somebody needs a night off on the blue line, and that'll be the role for at least the rest of this year. I really don't know if there is a way, right? And unless he just, flips a switch and starts playing really, really well in practice and in the limited opportunities he's going to have in games, I can't really fathom too much changing here, barring injury to somebody ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a player who in the offseason, people thought it was an overpay coming off of playing 20 minutes a game with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we were like, all right, well, if he plays a lesser role with Detroit, maybe he could make that worth it. He played above his pay grade in Toronto, got burned. So maybe if he comes to Detroit, plays 17 minutes a night, 16 minutes a night, he'll be better. But he's been playing on the third pair. And I think part of that is a lot of the opportunity that he has had is playing with Shayne Gostisbehere, who we just talked about in segment 1. Both of those guys together was a defensive disaster while Sherratt was hurt. But we've seen when he has played a 5-minute drop of ice time per game. Last year, he averaged 20 minutes per game. This year, he's averaging 15 when he has played. He played 80 games last year, too shy of a full season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's played 35 games this season. And I thought when they signed him coming into the offseason, because remember, this is prior to the Jeff Petrie acquisition, we were having conversations of him playing on the second pair. Because when you looked at the right side of the defense, it was like, okay, it was Moritz Seider and then who? Ben Sherratt, who's a left-hander who can slide to the right. Shayne Gostisbehere, who's a left-hander who can slide to the right, or an actual genuine right-hander. And then maybe you call up one of your, like you looked at it and you go, well, this is your guy. Like you signed him to be your second pair defenseman. I do genuinely think that might have been the plan, but he got outperformed by a 35-year-old in training camp in Jeff Petrie, who by no means has been stellar. I mean, I was talking about Shayne Gostisbehere's deployment versus quality of competition. Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie are like straight down the middle in terms of the quality of competition they face across the season. Like they have a good mix of elite versus grit talent they face, and they're getting hammered every single game. They are firmly negative at Corsi for percentage relative. So in shots, they just get so many shot attempts against when they're out there. But that's still not enough for them to risk putting Justin Holl on that pair. When he does play, he's the only defenseman on the team who has bulk majority offensive zone deployments, which means that when he does play on a third pair line, they still don't trust him to play against or in the defensive zone. They put him in the offensive zone 52% of the time because they don't want him against the other team's weakest competition on the ice. And I mean, what can he do to reestablish himself? You're right. Like the answer is play better. Play in the system is really what I'm asking. Because the biggest thing that's been killing me with Justin Holl, and yeah, again, I reiterate, I think part of the issue that we've had with Justin Holl, or the opportunity that Justin Holl has had this season, is when Sherratt was hurt and he got all those games in a row of playing, he was paired with Shayne Gostisbehere, and that just is not a good. That was just, you had to do it. You had to do it. Like what else were your other pairs going to be? So I think he kind of got the short end of the stick in that regard, but also he played himself into that position. He was given opportunities and he couldn't play himself up in the lineup like Jake Walman did last year. Jake Walman comes back from injury, starts on the third pair, plays himself up in the lineup. So the biggest thing that I need from Justin Holl for him to reestablish himself is to play in the system. Stop chasing in the defensive zone. You see so much. This is a defensive scheme that is so reliant on constantly. Everybody has responsibility in a defensive zone, cycling bodies, switching on and off puck carriers. Everybody's moving at all times. It's a very complex defensive zone shift system, but it works very well when it is flowing. And I feel like Justin Holl just hasn't figured it out yet, in that he's always chasing the puck carrier away from positioning, leaving a guy open, and that's the end of it. It's more nuanced than that, but I mean, it's going to be hard for him to reestablish himself. And like, what do you do with him? I mean, short of the things I said at the beginning of the segment, man.
Yeah, same. He's gonna help give people a day off when you feel like they need it, and if he can excel in those limited opportunities, then maybe he can play himself into some more time. But yeah, that's gonna be the rest of the year at a minimum. I don't really know what else there is to say.
I don't think there is anything else left to say. I think that your next question becomes, the Red Wings going into the trade deadline are probably going to need to address their defense, which means either shipping a defenseman out that's currently on the roster or waiving them. And I think those are your two routes, because they need to bring somebody else in to reinforce that defense if they really want to be serious about making the playoffs. Or, I mean, that's it. Like, we had that conversation, soft buyers, right? Or you just deal with it and you hope your team can make the playoffs with the roster they got, which is also a viable solution.
Reinforcements internally too.
Yeah, maybe.
Who am I?
So anyways, let's head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll preview the game against Colorado Avalanche. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. We're driven by a search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed you do.
Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Let's preview the game against the Colorado Avalanche, Scotty. And here's what we do know heading into the game, based on some confirmations by Ansar Khan on Twitter. He was at the practice on Wednesday. We know that the lineups are staying the same. So the forward lines that we talked about on Wednesday's episode are still going to remain. It means your top line is still going to be Rasmussen, Larkin, and Kane. So it kind of answers our question of, do you give them more time? Because they're going to give them a little bit more time to figure it out, especially because the team's been winning. And then also Alex Lyon is confirmed to be the starter. But Colorado Avalanche, despite it being at home, are kind of a wagon, and it continues this really difficult stretch the Red Wings have had the early start here to February.
Yeah, there are several numbers that indicate that they may just be the best offense in hockey. No further than, at very simple terms, just goals scored a game. They lead the entire NHL, excuse me, in goals scored a game. And they are, I think a wagon is a good way to put it. Obviously, you have McKinnon, who has been lighting it up to Seal Makar. Like, they go down the roster, man. That's a really, really powerful and high-flying offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got guys like McKinnon, who's approaching 100 points, Rantanen, who's over 70 points right now.
McKinnon already has like a 30-60 or a 35-60.
Makar's got 60 points, which is no surprise. I mean, this is a top-heavy team for sure. And so you're going to really need to rely. Well, they might also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10+ goal scorers with Miles Wood at 9 goals himself. So, I mean, they have decent depth scoring as well down the lineup. I mean, this is a team that won the Stanley Cup not too long ago for a reason. They are no slouch. Their power play and penalty kill are both top 10, with their penalty kill at 10th, where the Red Wings is at 9th. The power play for the Colorado Avalanche is at 8, where the Red Wings are at 10th. So, I mean, this is going to be it's a high-powered scoring offense with great special teams. You're going to have to bring your A game against a team like the Colorado Avalanche, but we've seen them lose against really good teams. We saw that against Vancouver and against Edmonton Oilers, but we've also seen them beat good teams like the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins. So, I mean, they're very capable of bringing their A game and surprising a team, especially with home ice advantage being a nice factor as well. But, I mean, it's going to be it's second in the Central Division. This is a really good hockey team, and there's not much else that needs to be said besides you're going to have to try and rely on shutting down the high danger chances against a really lethal scoring hockey team.
Yeah, and take advantage if you're on special teams, if you're on the power play, rather, take advantage. That's really, I think, going to be kind of a big factor just because they are going to put up goals, right? The Avs are obviously just this entire current era of Avalanche hockey. That is how they beat teams. They will outscore you. They will outscore you. They've proven that can be a recipe for success in this league. So yeah, man, I'm with you. They don't have the greatest goaltending situation in the league, so like you're going to have an opportunity to score as well. It's just really hard to get into a shootout with the Avs and expect to come out on top. I mean, that's a tall task. Like you're going to have to play that low event hockey, baby. If the score sheet looks kind of like what that one Oilers game looked like, where it was like we gave up 40 shots, but didn't give up very many high danger, right? And it's like, all right, we're going to give up shots, but maybe if we can just kind of limit the high danger ones, we can at least keep our heads above water here. I think that's probably the way to go. So yeah, man, this is a really, really tall task at home, but the Avs are still pretty heavy favorites, even as a road team.
I mean, that's no surprise, right? I mean, this is a
No,
team
yeah,
that
not at all.
is a tier above you. I mean, the Red Wings are. You could argue the Red Wings are playoff contenders, while the Colorado Avalanche are very clearly Stanley Cup contenders.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a fun one. It's always fun and a spirited bout when the Colorado Avalanche come to town. But I mean, in terms of what can this team do, it's like I said, it's going to come down to doing the same thing you do to win most of your hockey games. You'll probably get outshot. You'll probably get outchanced. But limiting the high danger chances is the way to do it. And I think they're sixth in the league at 5-on-5 at high danger chances for. So it's gonna, like we said, I think we said against the Edmonton Oilers, right? A movable object versus unstoppable force, where the Edmonton Oilers, the unstoppable force, won. Yeah. So let's hope the immovable object comes out on top on this one.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, they're gonna need it. So, Scotty, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
Cool. Awesome. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, recapping this one. So stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.